Meghan Markle and Prince Harry managed to transform a 3-second red carpet moment with Grammy-winning music producer David Foster into a 5-day international firestorm, one that has now prompted celebrities from Catherine McPhee to Jamie Kern Lima to quietly, carefully, and very deliberately distance themselves from anything and anyone carrying the Sussex name. And by the time I finish walking you through every detail, I am going to show you exactly who I believe actually authored that bizarre, forced damage control statement published through People magazine. Because the answer to that question tells you everything about what is really unfolding inside that gated compound in Montecito right now. So let me take you through it. Every detail, every misstep, every fingerprint on this disaster. It all began at a charity fundraiser in Canada last Friday evening. The David Foster and Friends Foundation was hosting a musician's benefit, the sort of polished, celebrity-heavy evening you would expect when a 76-year-old music legend gathers his industry network in the name of philanthropy. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were in attendance. David Foster's wife, the former American Idol star Catherine McPhee, stood beside him on the red carpet. The photographers were positioned, the flashes were cycling, and this is the exact moment where everything went sideways. There is a clip. You have almost certainly seen it by now. In this viral video, Meghan Markle extends her arm toward David Foster as he approaches along the red carpet. She is clearly attempting to greet him. Foster does not stop. He does not acknowledge her. He walks directly past her outstretched hand and positions himself to the left of Catherine McPhee for a group photograph. Meghan, in a moment that has now been dissected frame by frame around the world, quickly tucks her floating arm behind her back and leans into Prince Harry, trying to recover. But the cameras caught it all. And within 24 hours, that clip had been viewed millions upon millions of times across every continent. Now, here's the part that almost everyone missed entirely. What happened after that red carpet moment is far more revealing than the moment itself. Because what followed was a textbook case of the worst instinct in modern public relations, the compulsion to respond to something that would have died on its own. And if you stay with me through this, you are going to see a pattern that explains why so many of the biggest names in entertainment are now running, not walking, away from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Let us start with the first wave of damage control. Within hours of the clip going viral, somebody close to the Sussexes briefed the Daily Mail. The article framed the situation carefully. It described how Meghan, and I quote the framing here, suffered what appeared to be an awkward exchange with Prince Harry's longtime friend David Foster at the charity event. It went on to describe how Foster appeared to ignore Meghan as she extended her arm to greet him. Then, almost as an afterthought, the piece introduced sources close to Foster who supposedly provided the real story behind the perceived snub. And here is what those unnamed sources claimed. They insisted that Foster simply had not seen Meghan on the red carpet, that he had already greeted the couple 10 minutes earlier at the entrance, that he was, in their words, always a big fan of Diana and would never snub her son or his wife. Stop right there. Catch that phrasing. A big fan of Diana? Not a big fan of Meghan, not even a big fan of Harry and Meghan, a fan of Diana. That right there is what is called damning with faint praise. It is the tell in the entire statement. Because when someone is supposedly defending your relationship and the best thing they can reach for is that they admired your late mother-in-law, that is not a defense. That is a very polite, very British way of saying something far less flattering. But here is where it gets worse. Because the Daily Mail briefing did not work, the story did not die, the clip kept spreading, and so the Sussexes escalated. This is where you need to pay very close attention to the mechanism, because what happened next is exactly the same playbook that has been deployed again and again and again, and it fails spectacularly every single time. David Foster was effectively pressured into releasing a formal statement through People magazine. Now, People magazine has long been the outlet of choice for the Sussex PR operation. It is where their version of events gets published, almost without exception, whenever they need to shape a narrative. And sure enough, a statement appeared under David Foster's name. Let me walk you through what this statement actually said, because the language itself is the evidence. The statement read, and I am paraphrasing the key lines here. As host of the event, Foster claimed he had already greeted the Duke and Duchess at the entrance 10 minutes before the red carpet moment. He said Harry and Meghan were dear friends. He insisted there was no awkward moment and certainly no snub. And then came this remarkable sentence. It is sad that certain media choose to deceive by misrepresenting a red carpet encounter for clickbait. And the closer. They turned simple positioning to get the best photo into a hurtful lie. Now, I need you to sit with that language for a second. Does that sound like the way David Foster, a straight-talking music industry veteran who has been producing records and managing difficult artists for over 4 decades, actually speaks? They turned simple positioning to get the best photo into a hurtful lie? That sentence has a very specific rhythm to it, a very specific vocabulary. It reads like someone performing victimhood through a carefully worded press release. And my belief, which I have held from the moment I first read that statement, is that Meghan Markle or her direct PR team wrote those words. They were handed to the Foster and McPhee camp, who reluctantly agreed to issue them through People magazine under David Foster's name. And this is precisely why celebrities are now fleeing, because this is the trap. If you are anywhere in the orbit of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and something happens, something small, something accidental, something that in any normal world would vanish from memory within 12 hours, you get dragged into a machine. You get pressured into making statements. You get quoted in People magazine saying things that do not sound like you. And the whole world watches while your name trends on social media for all the wrong reasons. Here is the part that ties this whole thing together. And it is a concept from a completely different world that I think explains the Sussex PR disaster better than any royal commentary ever has. In 2003, the singer and actress Barbra Streisand sued a photographer for taking aerial pictures of her Malibu mansion. The photographs were part of a California coastal survey. Almost nobody had seen them. The lawsuit was intended to suppress the images, to make them disappear. Instead, the lawsuit itself became the story. Over 400,000 people visited the website hosting the photographs in the month following the legal action. The images, which would have been seen by almost no one, became some of the most viewed pictures on the internet at that time. And ever since, this phenomenon has carried her name, the Streisand Effect. The act of trying to suppress, hide, or control a piece of information that instead amplifies it beyond anything the original story could have generated on its own. That is exactly what the Sussexes do, every single time. They take a moment that would have faded from public attention within a news cycle, and they inject it with steroids, ensuring that it lives for days, sometimes weeks, sometimes permanently in the public memory. The David Foster red carpet clip was a mildly embarrassing moment that most people would have scrolled past by Sunday morning. By the time the People magazine statement dropped, it was being discussed on every major news network, in every tabloid, on every social media platform, in every country that has even a passing interest in the British royal family. And if this were an isolated incident, you might forgive the miscalculation, but it is not isolated. Not even close. Think back to what happened just 1 week before the Foster debacle, Martha Stewart. Now, the specifics of the Stewart situation were different, but the underlying pattern was identical. Something minor occurred. The Sussexes could have let it go. They did not. They responded, they amplified, and what should have been a footnote became a headline for the better part of a week. Now, go back a little further. Remember the Kardashian situation? Kris Jenner celebrated her 70th birthday at a party hosted by Jeff Bezos. It was a major evening. She had the great and the good of American celebrity culture in attendance. And all anyone talked about the next morning was Harry and Meghan. Not because they did anything spectacular, because they managed to escalate something small into an international scandal, completely overshadowing what was supposed to be a celebration of someone else's life and career. And here's the detail from that Kardashian evening that tells you everything about the difference between smart celebrity management and the Sussex approach. Beyoncé and Jay-Z were at that same party, but they did not walk through the main entrance. They requested a side door. no arrival photographs, no red carpet spectacle. They understood instinctively that sometimes the most powerful move in a room full of cameras is to not be seen at all. Meanwhile, Harry and Meghan arrived through the front. Meghan wearing a black dress on Remembrance Day without a poppy, a choice that was either deliberately provocative or astonishingly careless, and either explanation is damaging. There was no planning, no foresight, and when the backlash inevitably came, the playbook kicked in again. Amplify, respond, make it about themselves. Every single time. Now, let me show you the evidence that this pattern is causing real, measurable damage to the Sussex social circle, because the birthday data is devastating. Meghan Markle's birthday arrived this year, and the silence was deafening. Serena Williams, once considered one of Meghan's closest friends in the celebrity world, posted nothing. No public message. No Instagram story. Nothing. Beyoncé, the woman who famously sent Meghan a congratulatory text after the Oprah interview, did nothing. The Kardashians, who had previously shown warmth toward the Sussexes, were completely silent. The only public birthday messages came from Kelly McKee-Zagefin and Tracy Robbins, 2 names. That is the entire list of celebrities who publicly acknowledged the Duchess of Sussex's birthday. And then there is Jamie Kern Lima. Now, this is a thread I need you to follow closely because it is, in my analysis, the single most revealing indicator of what is actually happening behind the scenes. Jamie Kern Lima was one of Meghan's most visible and enthusiastic public allies. Just last year, she was posting gushing birthday tributes on social media. She was publicly affectionate, publicly supportive, publicly devoted. This year, complete silence. No birthday post, no public acknowledgement, nothing at all. But what Jamie Kern Lima did post this year is far more interesting than what she chose not to post. She published a video on her social media channels about, and I want you to hear every word of this, how to identify a narcissist in your life. She shared commentary from a communications expert who made a very specific point. He said that if you are asking yourself whether you might be a narcissist, you are probably not one, because true narcissists never ask that question. They do not reflect. They do not do empathy. They only do themselves. Now look, I am not going to sit here and tell you definitively who Jamie Kern Lima was talking about, but I am going to tell you that when someone goes from leaving gushing public birthday messages for a person one year to posting videos about how to identify and remove narcissists from your life the next year, while simultaneously going silent on that person's birthday, the inference is not exactly a stretch. The pattern fits, and the timing is surgical. And this brings me to the real question that nobody in mainstream coverage is asking directly enough. Why do people keep leaving? Why does every friendship, every alliance, every professional relationship in the Sussex orbit seem to have an expiration date? Think about the list. Think about how many people have been publicly close to Harry and Meghan and then quietly, systematically drifted away. The common thread, the one variable that remains constant across every single one of these fractured relationships, is the same behavior we just watched play out with David Foster. The compulsion to control the narrative, the refusal to let any moment, however small, pass without intervention. The insistence that everyone in your orbit must publicly perform their loyalty, even at the cost of their own credibility and peace. David Foster and Catherine McPhee are a couple who, by Hollywood standards, have maintained a remarkably stable marriage and a relatively low profile in the tabloid world. They do not court drama. They do not seek controversy. And now they have been dragged into a 5-day international news story because they happen to be standing on a red carpet at the wrong moment. If you are a celebrity watching this unfold, if you are someone with a career and a reputation and a public image to protect, what possible incentive do you have to associate with 2 people who can turn your charity event into a week of negative global press coverage? And let me remind you, because this point tends to get lost in the celebrity gossip, nobody, not a single person anywhere, suggested that the original red carpet footage was edited. Nobody claimed it was manipulated by artificial intelligence. Nobody disputed the authenticity of the video. What they disputed was your ability to interpret what your own eyes were showing you. The statement said there was no snub. The video shows David Foster walking directly past Meghan Markle's extended hand. Those two things cannot both be true. And the attempt to gaslight millions of viewers into disbelieving what they watched in high definition is, in itself, a kind of arrogance that tells you everything about the people who orchestrated this response. But now I need to shift gears, because the other massive story unfolding simultaneously is the escalating legal battle over Prince Harry's immigration records. And this one has the potential to dwarf every red carpet drama that has ever played out. The Heritage Foundation, which is one of the most influential conservative policy organizations in the United States, has been at the forefront of a sustained campaign to obtain Prince Harry's immigration files through the Freedom of Information Act. The key figure driving this effort publicly is Niall Gardner, a prominent analyst with deep ties to the current American political establishment. And what the Heritage Foundation has uncovered, or more precisely what it has forced the State Department to acknowledge, is staggering. 307 documents. That is not a typo. That is not an approximation. 307 individual documents relating to a single visa application. For context, the average visa application file for a standard applicant runs to perhaps a dozen pages, maybe 20 if it is complex. 307 documents suggests something far more elaborate than a routine immigration process. It suggests intervention. It suggests exception. It suggests that someone, somewhere in the machinery of the American government, treated Prince Harry's application as something categorically different from what any ordinary applicant would experience. Gardner has been publicly urging the release of these documents, and he has taken the pointed step of copying Marco Rubio, the current Secretary of State, into his communications. This matters because the Heritage Foundation is politically aligned with Rubio and with the broader apparatus of the current administration. This is not an adversarial request from a political opponent. This is a friendly organization asking a friendly government to do the right thing. And still, the documents remain sealed. Now, here is the question that keeps me up at night. Why would a Republican administration, one led by a president who has made his personal disdain for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle abundantly clear, continue to protect these records? There are really only two plausible explanations. The first is bureaucratic inertia. Government departments move slowly. Legal reviews take time. Perhaps there is simply a backlog, and these documents will eventually surface through normal channels. That is the boring explanation, and I do not believe it for a second. The second explanation is far more interesting, and it involves King Charles III. Whatever the current American president thinks of Prince Harry personally, and there is substantial evidence that his feelings are quite negative, his relationship with the king is a separate matter entirely. The diplomatic relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom operates on a level that transcends individual family disputes. And if releasing Prince Harry's immigration files would embarrass the king, would create complications for Prince William, or would generate a diplomatic incident between two allied nations, then there is a very real incentive for even a hostile administration to keep those files sealed. Think about that for a moment. Think about how extraordinary it is that the same man who authorized the release of the Epstein documents, records that were far more politically explosive and personally damaging to powerful individuals, would hesitate to release the immigration files of a junior royal who holds no official diplomatic status and performs no recognized government function. The Epstein documents were a political earthquake. They implicated billionaires, politicians, and public figures on both sides of the Atlantic, and they were released. But Prince Harry's visa paperwork? Sealed, protected. 307 documents that the American people are apparently not allowed to see. The argument being made by several prominent commentators, and one that I find increasingly difficult to dismiss, is that the continued suppression of these documents amounts to a tacit admission. If the visa process was entirely normal entirely by the book, entirely in accordance with standard immigration procedures, there would be no reason to withhold anything. The fact that 307 documents exist and that every single one of them remains classified suggests that whatever is in those files would not reflect well on the people who process them, the people who approve them, or the person who submitted them. And there is another layer here that connects directly back to the drug use question. Prince Harry publicly admitted to extensive recreational drug use in his memoir and in his widely viewed interview appearances. Standard United States immigration forms ask applicants directly whether they have used controlled substances. This is not a gray area. It is a yes or no question on a federal document. And lying on that document is a federal offense. So either Prince Harry disclosed his drug use on his visa application, which should have triggered additional scrutiny and potentially disqualified him under standard protocols, or he did not disclose it, which would mean he submitted a false statement to a federal agency. Neither option is comfortable. And the fact that 307 documents apparently chronicle whatever happened during this process is, at the very least, suggestive. Now, let me take you somewhere completely different, because while the Sussexes continue to generate chaos, something genuinely moving is happening on the other side of the royal family, and it concerns Prince George. The Royalist newsletter recently reported that no photography signs have been appearing throughout Eton College. If you are not British, you may not know Eton, but it is quite possibly the most famous school in the world. Founded in 1440 by King Henry VI, it has educated 20 of Britain's prime ministers, countless aristocrats, and generation after generation of the royal family. Prince William attended Eton. His father attended Eton. And in early September of this year, 13-year-old Prince George, the future King of England, will walk through those same historic gates to begin his education there. Now, Eton's official position is that these no photography signs are part of a broader effort to protect the privacy of all students, not just George. But let me tell you something based on conversations I have had with people whose children currently attend the school. Until very recently, there were no such restrictions. Parents have been freely posting pictures from sports days, school events, and campus activities on their personal social media accounts without any pushback from the institution. These signs are new. They coincide precisely with the enrollment of Prince George. And whatever the school says publicly, the timing makes the actual motivation perfectly transparent. But the concern goes deeper than signage. The real anxiety for Prince William and Princess Catherine is not traditional media. It is not the tabloid photographers who are already bound by strict agreements and legal precedents. The real threat is the smartphone in every pocket of every 12 and 13-year-old walking those corridors. In the age of instant sharing, of TikTok and Instagram stories that vanish in 24 hours but can be screenshotted and redistributed forever, Prince George's fellow students represent a far greater privacy risk than any paparazzi lurking behind a hedge. And here is where you see the brilliance of the strategy William and Catherine are deploying, if you know where to look. The couple have used what is known in media relations as a gentleman's agreement before. When they were students at the University of St Andrews in Scotland, they negotiated an informal compact with the British press. The deal was simple. Leave us alone while we are at university, and we will cooperate with legitimate media requests during holidays and official appearances. It worked. The British press honored the agreement, and William and Catherine were able to have something approaching a normal university experience. They are now reportedly attempting to establish a similar framework around Prince George's time at Eton, but the challenge is exponentially harder now than it was 2 decades ago. In the early 2000s, the threat was photographers with telephoto lenses. The gatekeepers were a finite number of newspaper editors who could be reasoned with, negotiated with, appealed to on the basis of mutual interest and professional decency. Today, the gatekeepers are gone. Any student with a phone can capture a moment and broadcast it to the entire planet in seconds. And no gentleman's agreement covers the behavior of a 13-year-old with a TikTok account. That said, and this is the reassurance I want to offer if you are someone who worries about this young boy's safety and well-being, there are built-in protections at Eton that work in George's favor. The families who send their children there are overwhelmingly wealthy. connected, and keenly aware of social consequences. If your child photographs Prince George and posts it online, your child is not just violating a school rule. Your child is jeopardizing their own position at one of the most exclusive educational institutions in the world. These families understand reputational risk. They understand social capital, and the unwritten code at Eton has always been that you protect your own. A student who throws a fellow pupil to the media, especially a pupil whose family could have them expelled with a single phone call, is a student who risks being permanently excluded from some of the most powerful social networks on Earth. The harder years, I suspect, will come later, when George is 14, 15, 16, when he wants to go out with friends, when he wants, as his father famously did, to visit a nightclub or a pub or simply walk down a street without being recognized. At Eton, within those walls, he is protected by architecture, by tradition, by the self-interest of his peers' families. Outside those walls, in the real world of London and social media and camera phones, the challenge becomes infinitely more complex. But now let me give you something genuinely uplifting, because amid all of this drama and dysfunction, one young royal is doing something that should make every reasonable person smile. James, the Earl of Wessex, the son of the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, that is, Prince Edward and Sophie, received his exam results today, and they were good enough. Good enough to secure his place at the Royal Agricultural University, where he will study rural land and property management. He is heading straight there without taking a gap year. And here is why this matters beyond the obvious. James is a young man who has consistently and deliberately turned away from the trappings of royal celebrity. He has rejected a royal title. He has avoided the spotlight. He has not sought magazine covers or documentary deals or memoir contracts. Instead, he has chosen to pursue a practical education in land management, a discipline that directly prepares him for the responsibility of stewarding Bagshot Park, the family home that he will one day be responsible for maintaining and preserving for future generations. There's a word that gets used in these old estate families that I think is important here: stewardship, not ownership, the understanding that you do not truly own these properties. You are merely their custodian for the brief span of your lifetime, and your duty is to pass them on in better condition than you found them. James appears to understand this at an age when many young men are still trying to figure out what they want to do with their weekend. It is the quiet, unglamorous, deeply responsible approach to privilege. And it stands in such stark contrast to the Sussex model of monetizing royal status, chasing celebrity alliances, and treating every relationship as a potential press opportunity that the comparison practically writes itself. Tatler magazine recently named James one of the most eligible bachelors in the world. Young, wealthy, tall, and apparently grounded in a way that his more famous relatives sometimes are not. But the eligibility is not really the story. The story is the character, the choices he is making day by day about what kind of man and what kind of royal he wants to be. And those choices are pointing in a direction that should give anyone who cares about the future of the British monarchy a genuine reason for optimism. Now, let me bring this all home, because I promised you at the beginning that every thread would be tied off, and I meant it. The David Foster statement was not written by David Foster. I believe that with complete conviction. The language, the phrasing, the victimhood framing, the specific word choices, none of it matches the way a 76-year-old music industry veteran communicates. It reads like a press release drafted by someone who sees every interaction through the lens of persecution and every media story as a personal attack. It was issued through People magazine because People magazine is the designated channel for Sussex damage control narratives. And it was a catastrophic miscalculation because instead of killing the red carpet story, it fed it oxygen and accelerated it into a global news event that consumed 5 full days of coverage. The celebrity exodus is real. When your birthday arrives and the only public acknowledgements come from 2 people while Serena Williams, Beyoncé, the Kardashians, and your own recently devoted friend Jamie Kern Lima are all conspicuously silent, that is not an accident. That is a verdict. These are people who understand exactly how much a public birthday post costs them in Sussex terms. and they have calculated that the cost is too high. The Heritage Foundation will eventually get those 307 documents. Maybe not this month, maybe not this year, but the Freedom of Information Act exists for a reason, and the political pressure from figures like Niall Gardner and aligned officials like Marco Rubio will only increase. When those files finally surface, and they will surface, we will know definitively whether Prince Harry received special treatment in his immigration process, whether drug use disclosures were handled appropriately, and whether the American government bent its own rules for a man who holds no diplomatic position and performs no function that serves American interests. Prince George will be okay at Eton. The combination of institutional tradition, parental vigilance from Prince William and Princess Catherine, the self-interest of elite families, and the no photography policy that is now being formally enforced will create a protective bubble around that boy for as long as he needs one. The real tests come later, when he steps outside those walls and into the uncontrolled chaos of modern public life. But for now, the fortress holds. And James, Earl of Wessex, is a reminder that it is possible to be born into extraordinary privilege and choose to do something useful with it. No drama, no documentary, no forced statements through celebrity magazines, just a young man heading to university to learn how to take care of a piece of England. If you want to know what a functional relationship with royal privilege looks like, stop watching Montecito. Look at Bagshot Park. The pattern I need you to take away from all of this is the Streisand Effect operating on a scale that Barbra Streisand herself could never have imagined. Every time the Sussexes try to suppress, control, or spin a minor embarrassment into a favorable narrative, they achieve the exact opposite. The David Foster story should have lasted 6 hours. It lasted 6 days. The Martha Stewart story should have been a footnote. It became a chapter. The Kris Jenner birthday story should have been about Kris Jenner. It became about Harry and Meghan. And each time this happens, the pool of people willing to be in the room when it happens gets smaller. Eventually, and I suspect we are much closer to that point than most analysts realize, the pool reaches zero. No celebrity wants to risk being the next David Foster. No friend wants to spend their weekend issuing forced statements through People magazine. No charity wants their fundraising event reduced to a headline about a handshake that did or did not happen. And when the last door in Montecito closes, when there is nobody left willing to play the game, the Sussexes will be left with exactly what their strategy has always been designed to avoid: silence. The kind of silence that no press release, no exclusive interview, and no People magazine statement can fill. And that, I suspect, will be the final story. Not a dramatic ending, not a spectacular fall. Just a quiet, steady, relentless disappearing act performed not by Harry and Meghan themselves, but by every single person around them, one by one, name by name. Until the only voices left in the room are theirs, and nobody is listening.